Hello, my fellow witches, sorcerers, and other magical practitioners. My name is Aiden, and today we are continuing my Deity Work series. This is episode 3 of the series so far. The first 2 videos are already up, and you can watch those if you want to. First episode goes over what a deity is. The second episode goes over how to contact them, and like what contact looks like, how they contact you, and things relating to that nature. It's very long. Goes into a lot of details. This video will be focusing on actually starting deity work and what that looks like, how to get started, and just the foundational level of deity work in the modern pagan context. This can also apply to a couple other contexts, but this is generally focusing on modern neo-pagan traditions, found just like general eclectic neo-pagan traditions. Yeah, let's just get right into it. Let's get right into it. So, what is deity work? Before that, let's define. Just starting deities. Starting with a deity. How do you even start with that? Just start praying. We went over this a little bit in the first video, or second video, you know what I mean, the last video. We just need to start praying. Start praying to the deity that you want to work with, worship, whatever. Prayer is the foundation for all communication with spirits in general, but especially deities. Prayer can come in many, many, many different forms. And I'll probably be doing a series on prayer as well, because that's kind of why I started this channel, because I really want to do a series on prayer. So I'll be doing that soon. But basically, prayer is just communication with the divine, and whatever source of divinity that you find, that is what you'll be praying to. So let's say the deity you want to work with, start a relationship with, is Persephone. I keep using her as an example because it's pertinent to my life. You just start by saying, "Dear Persephone, thank you for being in my life. I ask you to help me out every day," whatever you want to say to her, or whatever deity you're working with. And I guess that brings us into our next point. Where do you go from there? What is everything? So I think there are 3 types of deity relationships that we mostly see. These are not all the types. These are the 3 main types that are pertinent to neo-pagan traditions, especially European and American traditions. European being vague as well. We'll get into that later probably as well. But again, this is a very basic crash course. There are tons of traditions with different experiences, some of which I'm also knowledgeable on, but this is just for these purposes. Anyways, what is worship versus working with a deity and deity work? I think these are different things, personally. Different, not separate. We'll get into that in a second. So a lot of people in forums and servers that I'm on in the online spaces tend to promote worship before working. And I think we should define what worship is. So deity worship, to me, in my understanding of it, worship is when you devote yourself to a specific spirit. I'll use Lucifer. For example, I worship Lucifer. Lucifer, I am devoted to. I make offerings to him every day. I pray to him every day. I give thanks to him. I worship him. I view him as an authority in my life, and that he has power in my life and is worthy of worship. I think that's fine. I think it's totally fine to worship deities. I kind of veer on the edge of worship for some deities, but I won't say I fully worship any one deity. It's just not, for me personally, it just doesn't vibe with me. Because I personally follow a belief set where the only thing worthy of worship is the highest thing. the highest, most inconceivable point where all things stream out from. We'll probably talk about that in another video, but the all would be the concept, or the monad, or God, if you want to call it that, or source, that thing up there. Personally, to me, that is the only thing I would see worthy of worship in my practice. Other people can worship whatever, whoever, anything they want. And worship can be tied to other things that aren't spirit-based, but that's not what we're going to talk about here. I think, however, that we should not be promoting worship as the first step. Because think about it this way. Would you worship something if you don't know that's something? You don't know why you're worshiping it. I like to think about it in terms of human relationships. Let's say there's someone you know about vaguely. This person's cool. Her name is Persephone. Is this? Yeah. Her name is Persephone. She's really cool. You've heard some things about her. You know, she's like queen of the underworld, pomegranates, Hades. But you don't know a lot about her. You just kind of know she exists. She's pretty cool. Greek. She's Greek. But you don't really know much about her. So why would you go out of your way to marry her on the first day? Because to me, worship is akin to marriage. And I kind of source that from different things, where nuns are married to Jesus, priests are married to the church. The Pope ends up being like the father of the church through lineage. And as a father, he has kids, and like, you know, it makes sense. It works in my head. It's not a perfect one-to-one comparison, obviously, but if you think about it, worship is like a marriage commitment. You are incorporating them into your daily life. You are incorporating them into your daily life. You see them every day. You interact with them. You have divine experience with them. You are constantly with them. You are worshiping them. You are actively seeing, you are the most important thing in my life. I worship you. I love you. I adore you. You are fantastic. You are amazing. You are beyond all things. I worship you. That's how I understand worship. Other people will have other definitions, but that's how I personally understand it. And I don't understand why we should be pushing worship before working. Because you don't even know that person yet. You haven't formed a relationship. You're just kind of like, I worship you. I'm married to you. It's going to work. Another thing I think people misconstrue about worship is that's groveling at a deity's feet. And that is praising them constantly as they're a blind god, not caring about you, a speck of dust upon the earth, who is nothing and meaningless. Yeah, no, that's not worship. That's a toxic relationship, and you need to get out of that mindset really quickly. If you believe that you are worshiping and offering to this deity who cares nothing for you, why are you worshiping them? Like, okay, this is something that I think needs to be noted. Why would you put all this time, effort, and energy into something that doesn't care about you, doesn't spend any time with you, doesn't give you anything in return? Because I see a lot of people who think worship is that. Who think that worship, when you worship a deity, you don't expect anything in return, you don't ask for them to speak to you, you just kind of give praise and offering for no reason. Like, deities are worthy of praise and worship because they give you something. It doesn't have to be like they give you money all the time. Like, you earn something. You earn a loving relationship with that deity. You work with them, and you find joy in what you do with them. Worship isn't dull and glum and gloomy all the time. Like, it's not. And I think that's a really toxic mentality that people seem to have for some reason. And I feel like it comes from a largely religious background and believing that because Yahweh never talked to me, Demeter won't talk to me, and Demeter doesn't care about me because I had a bad experience with the church, and that's really disheartening to see, because it's about building a relationship that you enjoy, that you want to grow and foster. I'm kind of getting off track. I am very passionate about this topic, though. I think it's a really important topic when it comes to starting out deity work. Moving on to the next category, that would be working with a deity. When you work with a deity, it's like a co-worker relationship. You work with them quite literally. You call on them in spell work, you give them a payment. Some people call those payments offerings. I personally prefer to call them payments because, to me, an offering, it's the terminology. Terminology really doesn't matter. It gets conflated and changed all the time. People do whatever they want with terminology. But, like, a payment, I am paying you to do something for me, and I get something in return for that. Payment. Offering, I'm giving you this because I like you. I think you deserve this gift. It's from my heart. Being paid is nice. I'm not saying like payments are bad and you shouldn't do payments. You should always be offering. I like getting paid for my work, personally. By the way, you should buy my stuff. Anyways. But payments aren't the same as offerings in my opinion. It's terminology. But back to the topic at hand. When you work with a deity, you are just working with them. You aren't actively worshiping them. You aren't saying that they are the highest thing. You aren't saying that like you're worshiping them. You aren't like praising them constantly. You may work with them once. That's fine. I have plenty of one-off relationships with deities. Sometimes they come back though, and then I decide to incorporate them into my practice more. So sometimes they are also on one-off, but it's fine. Well, an example of this, let's say you are doing a self-love spell. You would call on, for some reason, Echo comes to mind. So we're going to use Echo, even though she's not really a deity, she's a spirit, but it'll make sense. You call on Echo for help with a self-love working. And you call upon her in a spell, you do a spell, and you invoke her or evoke her into the space or yourself, and you allow her to help you out. And then you give her as an offering or a payment, depending on how you look at it. You give her as a payment, you will write a blog post about her, sharing your experience with her, saying, hey, she's really cool, she helped me out, I feel so much better, I started working a lot more on myself, and Echo helped me with that. I thank Echo for helping me out with that. That's a payment. It can also be an offering if you work with that spirit consistently and want to do it as a gift of kindness out of your heart. Like payment and offering, you can argue they're interchangeable. It's semantics, and I'm very big in semantics. So that's basically what working with a deity is. Very simple, nothing intense or extreme. That's like a big thing. A lot of people seem to think that working with a deity is extremely intense, very hard work. It can be. I say deity work is more strenuous, and that's what our next topic is. Deity work. What does that mean? I think it is built off of a foundational relationship that you've already established, which can be a worship relationship, or it can just be a working with relationship. Either way, it is a foundational relationship that you've built up, and you decided that you're going to work with this deity throughout the rest of your life. You are kind of combining the two, like conflated together into one thing. While you may worship and work with a deity, deity work separates itself in the sense that it expands on that relationship more, and it can be separate. You can do deity work and not worship. You can work with a deity and not worship, but do deity work, and all combinations. It hurts my brain right now to think about that, but all those combinations, you can have them all together, separate, in betweens, somewhere or the other, or just one. There's no one way to do it. I think deity work, however, is like a very more intensive practice. It is more It's similar to worship in the sense that it's marriage, but I wouldn't go so far. It's like a best friendship. Uh, and that point, it kind of starts to like get fuzzy, where like what these kinds of things are. 'Cause, like it is weird. Um, but generally in deity work, you are somewhat devoted to the spirit. You spend more time with them than just a coworker, but you may not spend as much time as a married partner. Um, it just kind of is like it's almost an in between, but also beyond. It just kind of varies. Deity work does not look the same for everyone, and it's kind of hard to pin down and define. Really, it's just kind of its own thing. Um, but why am I establishing all this? What does it have to do with getting started? It helps you figure out what these terms are before you get started. I think knowing what these terms are and what they mean helps you determine what kind of path you want to go down with the spirit that you're working with, whether you're already working with them or not. Um, you are going to want to know what these terms mean. What they mean to you personally matters more than what they mean to me, though. So if you have different understandings of the terms, then go for that. I'm just some idiot on the internet shouting my voice into the void, so you hopefully hear. But how do you actually get started with any of those? Like I mentioned at the beginning, prayer. What good does prayer do? Prayer can be used on the basis of spell work. I personally think prayer and meditation are the basis of all magic, spell work, ritual work, everything. It's all prayer and meditation to me. I know some people see that differently, but that's my understanding of how magic works in my system and my understanding. So from there, you can get things together for a spell. Let's do a money spell, because I love money spell examples and I use money spells all the time. So what would be a good deity for wealth, you're thinking to yourself? Let's go with Jupiter. Well, Jupiter has its own planetary associations. I personally see it as its own deity in a way. It's kind of complicated. Planets are weird. But you're going to go for wealth and maintaining money and expanding the money you already have. Jupiter's good at expansion and growing things. So you would call on Jupiter as a deity into the spell work. You might have some blue candles because those correspond to Jupiter. You will have maybe a bay leaf because that is very symbolic in kind of Greco-Roman culture, which is where we get the name Jupiter from, and those associations, and those are associated with mostly the sun, but can also be associated with Jupiter in some cases. It's about building those correspondences together. Get some oil, some abundance oil, for example. Put those on the candles. You want 4 candles. Then you light them up and start praying. As you're lighting them, you will say a prayer to Jupiter, being like, Jupiter, I call upon your name. Enter into the space through these candles. I ask that you anoint these candles as I anointed them with this oil, and you bless and empower this oil fully, imbuing it with your essence. Come upon these candles, and may they burn brightly and strongly into the future. As I light these and they burn down, I sing your praises and pray to you every day. Your praises will be sung. I will continue to honor you throughout my day. Bring this money swiftly and quickly to me as fast as possible. May I be able to maintain it, and may I be able to expand my wealth into the future. Always, ever growing, never ending. I have infinite amount of money because you are infinitely abundant. I use my money wisely, and you guide me through that. I thank you, Jupiter, as these candles burn down. May you go in peace as I complete the spell. Return when I call you once again. Hail Jupiter. That's like an example. I tend to be very baroque and very on the spot, but you can just literally be like, hey Jupiter, come over here, need your help. Please bring this money to me as fast as possible. Yeah, thank you Jupiter, you're really cool. Doesn't work for me because for me personally, I like to build up an image in my head. I like to expand on that. I like to incorporate the imagery of the spirit into that. I think it does help a lot of people because it incorporates a ton of different things into it and it helps you build a better consciousness of that spirit. When you have a full idea of that spirit, you can see them fully realizing things into your life. And it doesn't even need to be that complex, really. A prayer can be a spell. Um, it's you can really just kind of do anything. That's really complex. I kind of realized, but I like to do a ton of different things to bring in the influence of those spirits. Um, you don't even need candles or incense or anything. You can just sit down, be like, Hermes, I call upon you today to influence my communication. Through the workings of you, I ask you to come upon my throat. Help me to speak true words and good words. May I be able to say what I need to say to get what I want done. I ask you to help me see clearly as well as I go down the path I travel today. Guide me as I walk through my life. Thank you, Hermes. I praise and honor you. I will give you thanks for all your days. Amen. It can be that simple. You don't even need spells or you know what I mean. You don't need tools. You don't need tools. You don't need to build up all these correspondences. If you have your hands, you don't even need your hands. You can literally just close your eyes and say words. Just as long as you have a strong will behind it and you are able to connect with that deity on a personal level. And some things you may experience is like feeling the energy of that entity around you. Like you may feel the spirit with you. You may feel that spirit's energy like flowing through you and into the materials and the space. You may feel it, or you might not. I felt it really quickly, but I also had a pre-established relationship because I was working through Christian folk magic originally. So I was calling upon Jesus, the Trinity in general, the Virgin Mary, angels eventually. But I was like calling on things I was already familiar with. I had already been kind of praying to already and just kind of working with that system first. So if you are like just now jumping into working with a new deity, it may be a little bit awkward at first. You may not feel their energy. You may not hear them right away. But it will come with time. You will eventually open yourself up more. It's kind of like, it's about breaking down your barriers, essentially. You will be, the more you work with a spirit, the more you will get to know them. You'll get to feel them around you. You'll get to allow yourself to open up. And that's like pretty much the basic of the starting out with deity work. It's not really anything intensive. A lot of people tend to think it's like crazy intense and like your life will be changed. Your life will change because you're bringing in a new person into your life, and that's a wonderful thing to have. A new really cool person who is eternally beyond you, but they're still someone interesting. You'll get to learn about them as you learn about yourself through them, and it's just a start. You don't need to throw yourself into worship immediately. You don't need to throw yourself into a lifelong relationship. I think that devoting yourself to something that you barely know about is not the smartest idea. Don't think we should be devoting ourselves to deities as soon as we meet them. Get time to know them. Get time to learn about them and how they work for you. Like, some people experience deities different from each other, and that's okay. You're allowed to have different interpersonal relationships because they're infinite. They're beyond our understanding. They don't conform to the same human traits that we do. They're not anything. They're not the same as us. They're just not human. I don't know how else to put it. They're very ethereal. They're very godly. I don't know what I'm saying at this point, so I'm gonna move on. A few questions that people do have often is, how do I know if it's a trickster spirit? Very simply, you ask the spirit questions, which can make things tricky if you can't hear them yet. It's iffy. Um, but you just ask them questions like, let's say you're calling on Hecate, um, and she says, "Yeah, I'm a celestial goddess. I am on Mount Olympus. I am. My animal is teddy bears." You kind of are like, "Are you sure about that?" So you ask her questions about her mythology. It's like, "Okay, what role did you play in Demeter's myth?" And then she says, "Oh, Demeter, who's that?" You can kind of get an idea from there. um, and that's why research is also important sometimes. But this is kind of like a personal thing. If a spirit is a trickster, why would it go out of its way to pretend to be a deity that already exists? Is kind of my thing. I've never really had experience with tricksters like pretending to be deities. Um, why would like a spirit try to pretend to be Hecate when it could just pretend to be like, I don't know, Zelarbalov? It's like, hi, I'm Zelarbalov. I'm a new god, the only real god. All the other gods are fake. I'm your god. And like tricks you into a relationship. That would make sense to me as if a trickster spirit was doing that. But like if you are Hecate, you're a well-known goddess, very well known, especially in modern neo-pagan circles. Um, why would a trickster spirit try to pretend to be that? Because you'll still be making offerings and like payments and devoting your energy to Hecate, not to the trickster. Even if it calls itself Hecate, you're not directing your energy towards that trickster, you're directing that towards Hecate. Because when you focus your energy and like focus your attention onto a deity, you're focusing onto that deity. You're not focusing onto a trickster. It's more common, I feel, with like lesser spirits, like the dead. Like it's a lot easier to pretend to be a dead person than it is to be God. Like you can make up a dead person's name and they'll never know. My first time doing necromancy, I got a trickster spirit immediately, sort of. It was a real person, but I was pretending to be someone else. And he was playing around with me. It was an interesting experience, very weird experience. We're not here talking about necromancy. This can also be seen with like demons sometimes, where you're calling up all these energies, these infernal energies. So you might get a trickster coming through first. Demons, for me personally, are a lot easier to check because you can just ask, how many legions do you have? And if they're like, I don't know, mix up a number, and it's not the legion they have, it's probably not that demon. Probably. Ask their colors as well. I had this one experience where I would call up Stolas, and he gave me like the entire like the each of the scales for color. It blew my mind when I looked it up. Like king scale, queen scale, princess scale, prince scale. He gave those 4 scales. It was insane. Like I blew my mind. Um, we're not here to talk about that. Anyways, so that's just kind of my spiel on tricksters. Also, if they get the job done, they get the job done. There's no denying that. If something gets the job done, then it gets the job done. Obviously, be careful with that. Don't take that too far. If like a spirit's like tricking you, and you really think it's tricking you, don't keep wasting your time on that spirit. Just banish it. Just Apopontus Kakademinos and woo, do a star ruby or something. um, you don't need to do a star ruby. You can literally use so many different banishing practices. If you want me to do a video on banishings, please let me know. I guess closing thoughts. Deity work is not as scary as it may seem. Especially when you're starting out, it may seem really scary and like people try to scare you a little bit. We do fearmonger a lot in the occult community. I really don't like that. Don't let anyone gatekeep your religious experience. If you want to start talking with the deity, you don't even have to work with the deity. Just talk. Start praying to them. Just say, "Hey deity, I want to talk to you." And be like, "Hey person, I'll talk with you, I guess." And then you start talking. Don't need anything yet. No contracts, nothing. Just you doing you. And just, yeah, work at your own pace. start off with little things, like little spell works, call them into space. You don't need to invoke them or like do anything crazy, just talk to them. One last thing before I go. Next video is most likely going to be the last video of the series. Kind of. There'll be one final episode before I redo the Deity, what is a Deity video. That final episode will be a Q&A session. If you have any questions relating to Deity work, like any at all that I have not covered and don't think I will cover in the next video, leave them in the comments of this video, go to my Twitter, go to my Instagram, wherever you can find me, and let me know what you want answered. I will tell you whether I can answer that or not if you leave a comment or whatever. Just let me know. I will try to incorporate that into the last episode. It'll just be kind of like a Q&A, going through the questions that y'all give me and answering them as best as I can to the best of my knowledge. That way you all get the best of both worlds, where it's like I'm giving this long form series, but you still have questions and you're really like, I don't know what I go with. Like, it can be any question, like anything, like even specific to your practice. Just like don't give me super personal details, please, because I feel uncomfortable about that. Like it can be like specific to your practice, just like general Deity work questions, questions about things you've heard and aren't sure about. Like, I don't know, do I trust this? Do I trust you? Do I look for a different source entirely? So yeah. Again, always do your research, check other sources, fact check me. If I get anything wrong in this video, or you think I said something wrong, let me know. Start a discussion in the comments down below, and thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.